The film kicks off at a late-night convenience store in Los Angeles. Here, a low-level drug seller named Nick is in the middle of deciding on a coffee flavor for his former lover Dallas and his partner in crime, Billy Hill, who are growing increasingly restless. Nick eventually settles on chocolate macadamia, only to discover that the machine is out of stock. He vents his frustration to the cashier, who recommends an alternative flavor. Nick, begrudgingly, selects hazelnut coffee. As he pays, he requests a complimentary cake, only to be told that it's only available for purchases of $20 or more. This news infuriates Dallas, leading her to draw her gun and fire at the cashier. Shortly after, they hear the sound of a police car approaching the store. Nick quickly switches roles, pretending to be a customer while Dallas and Billy conceal a body. The officer, unaware of the situation, comes in for a coffee. The trio then proceeds to eliminate the officer, and the story then shifts to Texas, introducing Casey, who was once a partner of Nick's in their drug-dealing activities. Casey has transformed his life and is now happily married to his lovely wife, Christine. They are in the process of adopting a child, with the plan set for Thursday morning. During breakfast, Casey receives a call from his friend, Nick, who inquires about staying at Casey's place for a few days. Initially, Casey feels a bit uneasy about it, but eventually agrees when Nick mentions his upcoming wedding. As they eat, Casey shares the news of Nick's visit with his wife, Christine. She is puzzled by this sudden change, as Casey had never mentioned his friend before. However, Christine understands that Casey is busy and can't discuss it further, as she's already running behind schedule for work. She informs Casey that she'll be delayed that night due to dinner plans with her boss and a prior appointment with Dr. Jarvis from the adoption agency at 8:12 a.m. Later that evening, Nick arrives at Casey's doorstep, and the two friends are overjoyed to reunite after a long time. Nick catches up with Casey, asking about his recent activities. Casey reveals that he has transitioned into a career as an architect, which surprises Nick. He jokingly comments that Casey seems less interesting now compared to his past self. After a brief chat, Nick mentions he needs to run some errands and asks if he can borrow Casey's car, as his own vehicle has a flat tire. Casey readily agrees to this request, and Nick departs with the car. Later on, Casey returns to his job but struggles to focus, noticing one of Nick's suitcases in the guest room, the same one they had used for illegal substances in the past. This suspicion leads Casey to open it, only to confirm his fears when he discovers heroin inside. Furious, Casey confronts Nick about the drugs, demanding his immediate departure. However, Nick refuses, citing unresolved matters. Casey threatens to report the situation to the police and hand over the drugs, but Nick remains defiant. Out of anger, Casey discards the drugs in the trash at 11:55 p.m. As he does so, the doorbell rings. Casey opens it to find a pizza delivery boy. He claims he didn't order pizza, but the delivery boy aggressively grabs him and points a gun at him, revealing himself to be a Jamaican Rasta hitman named Ice. Ice inquires about the drugs, to which Casey admits he has already disposed of them. This revelation leads Ice to contact his superior, who orders him to eliminate Casey. After hanging up, Ice positions the gun at Casey. Casey suggests they smoke some marijuana together before he passes away. Ice, unable to refuse, agrees. As they smoke, Ice shares his dream of becoming a rapper. Engaged in eliminating companies solely for financial gain, an hour elapses during which they consume copious amounts of marijuana edibles. At this juncture, the hitman informs Casey that it's time to carry out the murder. Suddenly, his phone buzzes, and it's from a friend who requests his assistance in wrapping up another drug deal over the phone. Despite his reservations, he agrees and begins to wrap the drugs. Taking this as an opportunity, Casey strikes while the hitman is distracted, subduing him with a tangle of duct tape and locking him in his garage. Just as he thinks he's safe, the doorbell rings. Casey answers to find Dr. Jarvis outside, who has come to interview him about his suitability for adopting a child. Casey, feeling anxious, attempts to answer the questions truthfully, though he's particularly guarded about his time spent in Los Angeles and his recent dealings with another drug lord. In the middle of the interview, Dallas arrives at Casey's residence, convinced that Casey is involved in illegal activities. Despite his fears, Casey manages to deflect any suspicion by sharing his past experiences and his current situation with the hitman. Nick has left some cash with the heroin, Casey, who informs him that he's not around and asks her to leave, but she barges in, convinced that Dallas is her friend, Dr. Jarvis will welcome her. Dr. Jarvis, feeling uneasy about Casey's criminal background, decides to leave without asking her any questions. Casey, desperate to stop him, but Dr. Jarvis ignores him and leaves. Dallas then holds Casey at gunpoint, ties him to a chair, and inquires about the money Nick left. Casey denies any knowledge of it, stating he's left the drug business years ago. However, the reason Casey quit his life of crime is eventually uncovered through a flashback. Casey and Nick are caught in the middle of a botched drug deal that leads to a shootout, during which Casey accidentally kills a woman who is 8 months pregnant. The guilt of this act drives Casey to leave Dallas. Dallas, unimpressed by Casey's story, plans to wait for Nick's return, intending to have an affair with Casey. Casey, however, refuses, claiming he is married. Undeterred, Dallas peels off herself and attempts to have lovemaking with Casey. In the midst of the attack, Billy enters and shoots her from behind, splattering Casey's face with blood. Billy, who is also here for the money, tells Casey that Nick has stolen $2 million from the police and has concealed it somewhere, thinking Casey knows its location. Billy intends to use a saw and blowtorch to torture Casey, hoping to force him to reveal the money's whereabouts as he boasts about his skills in cauterization. Suddenly, they hear the sound of police sirens. In response, Billy quickly conceals his torture instruments and goes to investigate. Meanwhile, Casey frees himself from the duct tape around his wrists and grabs a frying pan. When Billy returns, he informs Casey that the police have come to arrest him next door. He resumes his torture preparations, but before he can act, Casey strikes him several times with the frying pan, rendering him unconscious. Once Casey is sure Billy is out of it, he takes out a handgun and aims it at Billy's head. However, he suddenly realizes that he is no longer the same person. Instead, he takes Billy to the garage and binds him upside down, like ice. A short while later, Nick calls Casey from a payphone and tells him he has a confession. His plans didn't pan out as he hoped. He says sorry to Casey for everything and confesses he took the heroin and cash from the police officer Nick was arresting with a voice that betrayed him. Casey knew something was off and inquired about it, but Nick just said he was moving abroad and said his goodbyes after ending the call. It was discovered Nick was shot and was on the brink of death due to losing blood. Casey cleans up after him in his house, which was now covered in blood. At 5 o'clock, a shady cop named Kasorv arrives at the house with a bag in his hand, and it's soon revealed Kasorv is the same cop who had stolen the cash from Nick before. He shows the bag to Nick's head, which looks like it belonged to Dallas and Billy. Kasorv asks about where the money is hidden, but Casey still denies knowing anything about it, saying Kasorv believes him, but thinks he should know where his friend had stashed the money. Kasorv then gives Casey a deadline of 7 p.m. to find the money, or he will make sure the Thursday incident of the dead body and the captives in his garage, whom he knows well, is recorded. Kasorv also asks about the whereabouts of the captives, and Casey takes him to them. The police officer doesn't waste a moment in harshly firing upon the incarcerated individuals, and instructs Casey to bury them as it's garbage day after the officer departs. Casey perseveres in cleaning the house. Upon his return home, he notices Nick's vehicle parked in the driveway, triggering a sudden recollection of the damaged tires Nick had pointed out earlier. Casey inspects his vehicle and discovers the hidden cash in the spare wheel and a small box that Nick had previously left for him in his absence. When he opens the box, he unveils 2 timepieces, one for Christine and one for himself. Next, Casey confiscates Ice's phone and contacts his employer, informing him that the narcotics will be sold at Casey's residence at 7 p.m., installing a trap for the Jamaican cartel and corrupt law enforcement. The Jamaican cartel and the corrupt cops arrive at the house and end up shooting at each other, executing the planned scheme. While en route to Christine's airport, she spots Casey and is taken aback, asking about his visit. Casey explains his departure to France and his desire for her to accompany him. Christine realizes Casey's intention to leave her behind, confusion but unsure of her next steps since she's invested in her job and adores Casey, believing he won't follow her. Casey opts to depart on his own, but Christine intervenes just before he leaves, choosing to accompany him. She requests information, and Casey assures her he'll provide all the necessary details during their journey.